Hey everybody, it's Overkill here with another Warhammer Army Focus. Today, due to a three-way tie broken by your guys' likes on comments on the last episode, we'll be looking at the destroyers of the old world, the Chaos Warriors. So, of course, the Chaos Warriors are the fifth faction in Total War Warhammer. They are behind a pre-order DLC paywall, as people would call it. I'm not going to get into that, of course. People get bashed every day for their standings on either they hate the DLC or they support it. I'm not going to get into that. We are talking about the Chaos Warriors as an army, not as a DLC. So, just taking a look at their characteristics and geography. The Warriors of Chaos are very unique in the fact that they have little to none in the range department. The most they have are Marauder Cavalry with javelins and Marauder Cavalry with axes. But, at the same time, they also have one of the most fearsome ranged weapons in the game, which is the Hell Cannon, which, if you have one, it makes up for your lack of other ranged units, let's be honest. But this means that when the Followers of Chaos get into combat, they are nigh unstoppable. Until then, they are at a huge disadvantage, especially against artillery-heavy armies such as Dwarves in the Empire. But as I said, once they get into melee, they are nigh unstoppable. The mix of heavy infantry, monsters, cavalry, all that good stuff. They have one of the largest selections of monsters, actually the largest selection of monsters, I would say, of the five factions. And yeah, if you're facing up against Chaos, you best pray that your deity assists you, because theirs certainly will be assisting them. But more on that later when we get into the religion of the Chaos Warriors. Now, the Warriors of Chaos are the northernmost faction, occupying a large amount of territory consisting of the Chaos Wastes, Norsca, the Eastern Steppes, and what's known as Troll Country, where pretty much most of the beasts of chaos actually come from. All of these lands are featured in Total War Warhammer, aside from the steppes. I would love to see one of the expansions take us far enough east to bring in the Eastern Empires and the Warriors of the Steppe, but they are all past the mountain ranges of the Ogre Kingdoms, which are the only Eastern main faction. So my hopes are low for that, but hey, I don't know how CA will handle the Warhammer map in 3 games. We may be in for a huge surprise. But with that out of the way, let's discuss the actual geography of the Chaos Wastes, which is where the Chaos Hordes will actually start in the game. So due to the collapse of the Warp Gates, which were created by the Old Ones. Now, I can't spend this video talking about the Old Ones because there's a lot of stuff about them, and that's not what this video is about. But basically, the Old Ones are a god race, essentially, of spacefaring, potentially reptilian beings who created the world and all who live on it. Very brief and very simple, I know, but if you want to learn more, of course, you can go look up the Old Ones. But anyway, their warp gates, which are what they use to travel around and stuff, going from different dimensions and all that, collapsed in on themselves, and in turn allowed the Realm of Chaos, which is another dimension, essentially, where the Chaos Gods live. It allowed it to bleed into the mortal world. Ever since, destruction and corruption have slowly spread out from the collapsed gates, and it's just been corrupting for aeons. Normal life is next to impossible for any race here, aside from the Chaos Warriors themselves, because, I mean, they're living there, obviously. But that's after centuries of getting used to it and being corrupted and mutated by the land itself, turning these simple humans into super soldiers. Their swollen frames and horrifically large statures leave them towering over the common folk of the southern races. The Chaos Warriors are going to be the largest infantry in Total War Warhammer, the first game. Of course, if they bring in ogres, they're huge. But yeah, I would imagine that even compared to the Black Orcs of the Orcs and Goblins, Chaos Warriors would be at least taller or the same size. I would believe taller, though. So next we move on to politics, and there isn't any. Nah, I'm not joking. For the Warriors of Chaos, there's no governors, there's no emperors, there's no kings, nothing. No government to be seen anywhere. Why? Because government and civilization are against the core foundations of chaos itself. Where could you find chaos with civilization in the mix as well? Now, factions that we don't get to play as or control, such as the Norskins, they have a form of hierarchy. They have Jarls, which act as kings, and they have a warrior class whole system like the Vikings from our real history. But the actual Warriors of Chaos themselves aren't controlled in a civilized government. They are literally bands of unstoppable, bloodthirsty warriors that are led by Chaos Champions. Now, champions are excellent, the top of the top of their chosen of their given warband, the warband that they were part of. Now, how they become the leader of said warband is up to discussion, depending on either they kill the former leader, they prove themselves worthy to become a new leader, anything like that. Either way, they are the best of the best fighters, and they even start getting their own bonuses, we'll say, from the Chaos Gods. Mutations here and there, a little bit of magic abilities here and there. But yeah. But above these champions are Chaos Lords, and now Chaos Lords are absolutely 100% ruthless. They have no regards for pretty much anybody, and they'll control multiple warbands. They'll have multiple champions beneath them, which they control, essentially. And they will lead these armies out of the Chaos Wastes into human and dwarf and orc and everywhere. Even the Dark Elves in Naggaroth aren't safe. The Chaos Wastes are connected to the two main land masses in Warhammer, which some people, of course, haven't really noticed if they haven't looked at the huge Warhammer world map. But they take their warbands to the whole world and just wreak havoc. But then there's one more step above that, if you can believe it, and that is the Everchosen, the chosen commander of the entire world's Chaos Forces. When a Everchosen is chosen by the Chaos Gods, everyone bands together to follow him wherever he goes. And the current one, Archaon, which is one of our legendary lords, actually manages to succeed in leading his Everchosen army of Chaos Undivided into the Empire and basically destroying it, and then the world blows up and all that good stuff. And anyway, the end times, blah blah blah. But the Everchosen, there have been 5 recorded Everchosen, I believe, 4 before Archaon, and basically they all lead an army of Chaos Undivided, which is all of the gods joining together to create a huge army of chaos that is essentially unstoppable. Of course, though, since the world didn't blow up before Archaon, that means 4 of his predecessors were defeated, but we won't get into that. So, on that cheery note, we move on to religion. Yes, which is quite possibly one of the most important aspects of chaos. Now, chaos itself is split into 4, essentially, because of the 4 main chaos gods, who all have their own tremendously large following. Those being Khorne, the god of blood, war, and slaughter, blood for the blood god, all that good stuff. Nurgle, the god of disease, decay, destruction, and death. Slaanesh, the god of seduction, ecstasy, and twisted pleasure. And finally, Tzeentch, the god of magic, change, evolution, destiny, lies, and trickery. Nice bit of titles for him. But remember how I mentioned that if you come across a Chaos Warrior in melee, you better pray to your deity that they protect or assist you in battle. Well, that's what makes the Chaos Gods so powerful in Warhammer, is the fact that they are essentially alive. They are everywhere. Their influence of power is unparalleled to any god in the Warhammer universe. Pretty much everything that happens in the Warhammer world fuels them. Death, pleasure, disease, and even the magic use of other factions all empowers one of the 4 gods. And it just makes you think that chaos is essentially unstoppable. And in a sense it is, because, well, we know the world ends because of chaos, but imagine we're a few years back where the end times wasn't a thing, and we're all thinking, oh yeah, we'll defeat chaos. But you really think about it, literally every single simple act powers the chaos gods. They're unstoppable. As long as there's chaos gods, there will be the warriors of chaos. And that's a horrifying thing to think about, because it literally means they are unstoppable. And no matter how hard humanity, the dwarf kingdoms, the orcs and goblins, the elves, no matter how hard they try, chaos cannot be defeated forever. But yes, many of the tribes and warbands of chaos worship all 4 gods in a sort of pantheon. It's like paganism of our own history, but many tribes take to the extreme and they choose and follow a specific god. Khorne chosen warbands, for example. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. These chosen warbands who devote themselves to a single god receive unparalleled amounts of mutation compared to the rest of the Chaos Warriors, and lots of other gifts, they would call them, onto themselves. For example, Khorne chosen would receive more bloodlust than they already had. Their bodies would be swollen further than they already are. They would turn red with the anger and the blood of Khorne and all that. and they'd become nearly unstoppable. They wouldn't give in to pain, they wouldn't faint to basically mortal wounds to anybody else, and they would just continue to fight until they died. Like, they were just so destroyed that they couldn't fight anymore, essentially. Nurgle gifts his followers with all the diseases of the world, but makes them immune to them. So, not immune, I suppose, but they don't feel any pain from their diseases. You can see that Nurgle warriors are disgustingly rotted and bloated and such, but they feel no pain, and they spread these diseases everywhere they go. Like, they can fight chemical warfare, essentially, with their enemies before they even get close to them. Slaanesh forces are given extreme nimbleness in battle. They are a lot quicker than most other Chaos Warriors, but they also get a sense of just extreme pleasure from everything, essentially, especially killing stuff and the like, essentially. And Tzeentch, finally, don't get so much of the physical mutations as the other gods give, but the followers of Tzeentch get maybe like an extra arm here or there, some extra eyes, a little bit of ability to cast magic and stuff. But the big thing for them is the magic that just surrounds them. The sky around a Tzeentch warband is exploding with magical thunder and just fire flying everywhere. The weapons of a Tzeentch warband are alight with eldritch flames. There's little cracks of lightning coming out of their armor and weapons and such. It's a sight to behold, and Tzeentch generals actually have the ability to warp time themselves. They sense and perceive the flow of time itself, and instinctively can react to over a dozen or more, from what I read, different outcomes. So they can look forward in time, essentially, and they can react to anything as soon as it happens that their enemies do. Now, of course, in Total War Warhammer, this is a little far-fetched. It probably won't have anything to do with the game, but it is nice to know that Tzeentch generals are probably the smartest out of the four. Actually, that's definitely Khorne is just like charge in. Nurgle would be like, charge in and just hold them down, and Slaanesh is like, charge in and be really fast. Whereas Tzeentch is like, okay, we'll actually react to everything that they do. Yeah, so after learning about how they, the special gifts of their warriors and stuff, let's actually move into the military. The Hordes of Chaos are literally just uncountable numbers of lower marauders, which are essentially just the typical barbarians. They have straps and small armor plates on their chests and arms and such for their majority of their armor. They have this very stereotypical Dark Age Viking-ish helmet with the horns and such. And supporting them are the much better and far superior Chaos Warriors, which are in full plate armor, very menacing looking. Depending on the god they follow, they can be adorned with different symbols and special helmets and extra armor in certain places. And then, of course, above them are the Chosen, which are the chosen of any specific god. As we mentioned earlier, they're the ones that get the special treatment, essentially, from the four gods. And then, on top of that, they also have the largest variety of beasts and magical creatures and just monsters in Warhammer. Things like trolls and dragon ogres, chaos spawn, things like that. Even gore beasts which pull chariots, and that's going to be very interesting to see in the game. But yes, even though I mentioned the Marauders as the lowest of the Chaos Warriors, their stature and body shape just makes them even a huge match for even some of the best of some of these southern races warriors, just for how strong they are for such a basic troop. It's quite interesting to see that they really do have the best infantry in the game. It's quite safe to say. And even their cheapest things can take out some of the higher end troops of the other factions. It's quite nice. So this is a edit added into the middle of the video, as you can tell. Something I didn't do in the initial commentary is go over the actual units of the roster. So we are going to take a look at, well, not take a look at, but I'm going to just point out the units and have a nice picture of what they actually look like in the background of the video so that you can tell what they actually are. So for mounts, we have Dorgar, so I'm going to have a picture of Archaon on Dorgar, of course. We have a Gore Beast Chariot, which is a giant ape demon thing that's pulling a chariot. That's going to be really cool. We do have Manticores. I do mention later Manticores would be awesome for Archaon. And then we also have Chaos Dragons, which I did miss. So Archaon with a Chaos Dragon, maybe. We have Chaos Steeds, Chaos Chariots, and Barded Chaos Steeds. Now, I did go through that a little bit quickly, so I'll slow down for the other ones. For melee infantry, we have Chaos Marauders, which are, as I said in the video, the stereotypical kind of barbarians, leather straps and stuff. We have Chaos Marauders with great weapons, which on the tabletop are flails. So, interesting. That's what they look like. We have Chaos Warriors, sword and shield, big sword and shield, plate armor and all that good stuff. We have Chaos Warriors with great weapons, which are kind of clashing with halberds. I'm not quite sure what the great weapons and halberds different is. Maybe there's going to be a Chaos Warriors unit with two-handed swords. Is that what the great weapons means? But I'll be showing a halberds unit, basically. And then we have Chosen with great weapons, and then Chosen with halberds again. So, interesting, to say the least, that there's great weapons and halberds. It's going to be very interesting to see them in the game itself. And we also have Forsaken, which are possessed Chaos Warriors, essentially, and they look absolutely amazing. You can see them on the screen now. For melee monstrous infantry, we have Dragon Ogres, which are these big ogres, the body of ogres with the legs of dragons, essentially. They have huge hammers, some of them dual wield swords. They just look amazing. They're big, beefy, armored dudes that just look amazing. Next we have Chaos Spawns, which are literally just chaos abominations. They're just something right out of a nightmare, aren't they? Some poor saps actually can be turned into spawns by the power of chaos magic, so watch out. We then have two variants of Chaos Trolls. We have Chaos Trolls and then Armored Chaos Trolls. Now, I have no picture for an Armored Chaos Troll, but I can imagine that would be quite cool. But on the screen, there are Chaos Trolls. Then for Melee War Beasts, we have Chaos Warhounds and Chaos Warhounds Poison, which is interesting, as Chaos Warhounds have always been just a single unit, but you can see them on the screen. They're very evil-looking dogs. For melee monsters, we have the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. So this is an elder Dragon Ogre, essentially. They are the oldest class of Dragon Ogres, and you can imagine that if a Dragon Ogre is already very strong, these guys are going to be ridiculously powerful. It's one step away from being Kolek, essentially, because Kolek is a Shaggoth. He's just a named Shaggoth. So yeah, you can see him on screen. We then also have a Chaos Giant, and they're going to be really fun, stomping around at people, swatting them out of the way with their clubs or whatever, maybe even eating some people. That would be nice. For melee cavalry, we then have Chaos Knights and Chaos Knights with lances, and the Chaos Knights are some of the best cavalry in the game. They are some of the most heavily armored cavalry in the game, and they are a force to be reckoned with, and they also look beautiful. You can see them there. So for Missile Cavalry, we then have two versions of Marauder Horsemen. Marauder Horsemen, which have javelins, and Marauder Horsemen, which have throwing axes. On screen, of course, as well. Just Marauders on light horses. Then for vehicles, we have Chaos Chariots and Gore Beast Chariots. I'll have both of them going on the screen pretty much at the same time. And again, it's just the same as the mounts. It's just that these aren't mounted by characters. It's just the unit itself. Then for artillery, we have the Hell Cannon. So the probably the most effective artillery in Warhammer is owned by Chaos, of course. But yeah, guys, that is the roster. Let's get back to the rest of the video. So on the screen here is the actual roster for Total War Warhammer for the Chaos Warriors, and you can see that it's a great roster. If you know anything about the different units for Chaos in Warhammer, you can see that they have basically everything that you'll need, essentially. There's different types of warriors with all kinds of weapon options. Lots of different war beasts and war machines. The Hell Cannon, of course, is in there, which is excellent. And yeah, but the one thing lacking, as we mentioned earlier in the roster, is the lack of ranged units other than javelins, throwing axes, and the Hell Cannon. So basically you have two near no ranged missile weapons, which are literally just as far as you can throw them, essentially, as opposed to bows or guns. And then the Hell Cannon, which could probably shoot across the battlefield, I don't know, but it's just going to destroy like everybody. But yeah, and that's the main lacking thing. So in Total War Warhammer, you're definitely going to want to send in your cheaper marauders. Your marauders are going to have to take the blows from enemy skirmishers and artillery, because you cannot take the hits on your monsters, as they can get slain quite easily from artillery and massed missile fire. And you don't want to lose your heavy infantry, because they are going to be the key to winning the battle, of course, because they can hold the enemy units and usually crush them themselves, let's be honest. But you need to take the hits on the marauders. But don't worry, the marauders dying may seem like a huge sacrifice, but it'll always make Khorne more happy because they died, so there's always that plus. So with the geography of their homeland, their society, religion, and how they wage war all talked about, we move to our final section, the characters. First and most importantly is the Everchosen, the destroyer of mortals, as we mentioned earlier, Archaon. He is our first legendary lord for Chaos. Now, Archaon is a force to be reckoned with. In Total War Warhammer, he will be a melee and magic caster with access to the lore of fire. This means that on top of him already being one of, if not the best single fighter in Warhammer, he can also burn stuff with magic, and how cool is that? How much more do you really want? Archaon also has access to a unique mount in the form of Duergar, a demonic warhorse, which of course means he's cooler than a normal warhorse. He is going to be excellent in aiding Archaon in melee combat, kicking and biting people and just being a general pain in the ass to anybody fighting him. But if we have access to it, it would be great if maybe we could put Archaon on like a Manticore or something like that. That would be cool. I honestly think that a Manticore would be more powerful than Duergar, but who knows? We'll see what CA does with the game. Next up is Kholek Suneater, who is a dragon ogre. Do you guys know how big he's going to be? This big, to be specific. Look on the screen. Anyway, he's believed to be the second eldest of his kind, but sadly not a lot is known about him in the lore. We know that he took part in lots of sieges in Kislev. He's known to break the walls of castles with his hammer. He broke the walls of Kislev itself. Or not Kislev. Was it Kislev? Oh gosh. Anyway, don't mind me on that. He breaks walls with his hammer. You can see from the video though, he's huge, so it kind of makes sense. So how much more could you want from him as well? Well, some people think he's a god, so you could add that to his resume as well, I suppose. But finally, out of the three legendary lords is Sigvald the Magnificent. And you may be thinking, how could someone that looks like that be a Chaos Lord? Well, he is quite evil for his very flamboyant looks. He is actually quite a messed up dude. He's born of incest. His father and his father's sister had him, of course. His father was a noble in the tribe that Sigvald was born into, and he was loved by his father until he was banished from his tribe due to a certain taste for human flesh. So Sigvald returns, kills his father in his sleep, packs his things, and then heads to the Chaos Wastes, perfect life choices, where he becomes basically the symbol for Slaanesh. He now leads an army all over the world that's devoted to him, and not just Slaanesh, and kills everyone because he finds them ugly or annoying. And he also makes his bodyguard carry mirrors for shields so that he can look at himself during battle and, you know, fix his hair and such and all that stuff. I wish I was joking about that, but I'm not. But when you get past that kind of stuff, he is quite an awesome guy. The ground at his feet reshapes itself, and he actually floats above the ground. His feet don't actually touch the ground. His golden armor never rusts and doesn't get dirty, and his rapier is forged from silver from the sword of Slaanesh itself. This guy's pretty awesome. So, honestly, when I play Total War Warhammer, I'm not going to know who to choose at all. And, yeah, it's going to be very fun to try them out. But that's the current Legendary Lords. There are a few names that I would be interested to see on that list, mainly being Throg the Troll Kings, who in the tabletop can make trolls like an average, not an average unit, a unit that you can just bring loads of. You can just make your whole entire army trolls, essentially, and that's awesome. He was gifted by the Chaos Gods the ability to be intelligent, and that's why he became the king, because he can actually communicate and lead trolls. But another would be Wulfric the Wanderer, just read the lore of him, he's an awesome guy. And Valkia the Bloody, who is a demon princess. Now that's something I didn't touch on because it's not something that is in the roster, so I didn't feel like it was that quite necessary, but basically I'll add it in now. The goal of a lot of Chaos champions or lords is to become a demon prince, which is the ultimate version of just succeeding in becoming a pawn, essentially, to the Chaos gods that everybody loves. So Valkia is a demon princess who is pretty badass, and she seems like she'd be a perfect kind of character to be a legendary lord, honestly, or legendary lady, I suppose, just because of the fact that she can fly around and she's a very amazing fighter and such. But those names are just to throw a few out there, but we won't go into them too much. I already talked about Valkia quite a little bit, but they have lots of lore behind them. So if they interest you, they're only a quick search away. Just search their names. But I just like to throw out a quick thanks to everybody who commented and gave me good criticism on the last episode, the Empire one. Hopefully this episode is a step in the right direction for actual narrative and smoothness of the commentary. And hopefully it's a step in the right direction for the remaining 3 factions. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.